Good afternoon everyone, thank you very much for joining me on this latest upload. I really appreciate it, and thank you to everyone that continues to like, subscribes and shares the videos. I really appreciate that as well, and thank you very much for all the recent contact that I've had. Anyone that's been waiting on a reply from me with regards to universal credit, I do apologise. I'm getting back onto the people that I was dealing with 2 weeks ago this week. So I'll be in touch over the next few days. So this recent video, Agenda 21, or the latest video rather, Your Life in Their Hands, as I mentioned on my last upload, that this was sent to me by Claire at UK Column News. It was very kind of her. And a shout out to first and foremost Martin Edwards, who's the author of the document. And the research team of Matt Recchia, Harry Brown, Dave Gazy and Judy Hope. I'm not actually sure, I got sent this free of charge, but I'm not actually sure if you can purchase it or not. I'll need to make some inquiries about that. I'm not on any commission or anything like that, but just in case anyone did want to purchase it, if it is possible, because it is very, very important. And I actually think it's the type of thing that should be starting getting taught to high school students, because it's changing their lives. Society is being completely changed by Agenda 21 2030, and it's not even up for debate anymore, ladies and gentlemen. All you need to do is to take a look around, and hopefully after this video, when you do, the next time you do take a look around, you will be able to see that it is a plan that is in action, and it isn't just a theory. I don't think anyone classes it as a theory now anyway, because even if you're not versed in this stuff, you can feel, the vast majority of people can feel that there's something wrong. Now, I mean, some people, everyone takes it differently. Some people decide to become more miserable, and some people decide to do something about it. And we need to start to do something about it, because it is our life in their hands. There's no doubt about that. And even some of the people that are pushing these policies, like your Angela Rayner's and David Lammy's and people like that kind of ilk, they are in the hour as well, because they're going to be done away with just as we are, and or they're going to be in this control system just as we are. But they've helped them do it, and they've done it for nothing more than money and power, or perceived power. It's not actually power they've got; they're just puppets. But this once we've come to the end of this video, and it is a fascinating document. There's absolutely no two ways about that. I've actually read it twice, and it's something that like I say, it should definitely be taught in schools, because, well, we know that the education in schools is not education at all, it's indoctrination. And that's just the way. I mean, I'm not saying it's completely useless. Obviously you learn to interact with people, you learn how to count, and you learn how to read. Beyond that, it's pretty much useless. And I know there's a lot of teachers out there that won't like me saying that, but the problem we've got is, and the guy that started the education system, which is John Rockefeller, he basically said he didn't want a nation of thinkers, he wanted a nation of workers, and that doesn't sound like someone that's wanting to educate. Now, the Rockefeller family they'll be mentioned, they'll get a few mentions in this video, because they're very much a big part of Agenda 21, and we have to remember that these are the people, or this is the family rather, that drew up the education system and funded it to the tune of $4 billion. And John Rockefeller's dad was actually a snake oil salesman. That's a fact. So Agenda 21, I've listened to, as I said, Tony Gosling recently talking about rewilding. Now, rewilding, basically what that means is, it means that they want to select areas where they can start to reintroduce wildlife. Now, they've done it in Germany, and this is the thing about Agenda 21. When reading it on the face of it, if you're not versed in it, it can sound like quite a good idea. But when you start to put context to it, it's like everything. It sounds like a good idea, but with everything else, it's ripe for manipulation. Now, he was going on, Tony Gosling, he used to work for the BBC, and he was on the Richie Allen show a few weeks ago, like I say, about this Rewilding programme that they've got going. And in Germany, they've started to reintroduce wolves to the German countryside. Now what that's done is it's completely depleted the livestock of the German farmers, and it's going down. It's pushing them even further down than what they already are. I mean, there's all these kinds of restrictions on them. They're having to give up 20% of their land for these rewilding projects, and then the rewilding project itself is hitting their stocks even further. So it is just a matter of time before they go under. I mean, they've even, this climate change cult, they've even requested that the Church of England gives away 20 or 30% of their land also. Now, the Church of England more than likely stole it in the first place, but this is where we're at. This is what they're wanting to start doing. And the fundamental thing to remember is, ladies and gentlemen, that when a particular zone is designated as a rewilding zone, then that means that you, or me, or anyone else for that matter, is not allowed to go there. Now, what if they just say, well, it's worked so well here, so we need to take 30% of here, and eventually it'll be like being in a big factory where it's all outlined with lines for people to walk in designated areas to keep you away from the traffic for health and safety, and you can hardly walk anywhere. It'll be like that, which is very, very disturbing. Now, it's good that guys like Tony Gosler are coming out and sort of speaking against it, because he did say it himself. He said it's the World Economic Forum is the rise of the Fourth Reich. Now, I've mentioned the Fourth Reich before, and when I first read that, I thought, how can it be the Fourth Reich? But it's the thing with the Nazis tried to overtly take over the world. Now, everybody was aware that that's what they were doing, so it had a finite life. Even they knew that. Covert control is a completely different animal, because they're going underground and they need to manufacture your consent for it. And the thing about that is that people believe what they want to hear. And as I said before, the Agenda 21, it sounds like it's got some good things to go with it. I mean, it sounds like a good idea. It's like communism. Communism sounds like a good idea. It just doesn't work. Now this is it might as well be a communist agenda. Now, the Red Revolution was started by the Rothschilds. It was paid for by the Rothschilds, as is Israel and the Zionist organisations as well. So anything to do with the manipulation of humanity or society, you can certainly pretty much guarantee there'll be two families at the forefront of it. One would be the Rothschilds, and the other will be the Rockefellers, who started obviously the Rockefeller Foundation, etc, etc, etc. Now, recently, I'd listened, obviously, because it was on the Richie Allen show. He was talking about what was going on in Ireland. He's Irish, and he was saying that the Marie Donnelly, I don't know what job she holds in the Irish government, but she's a stalwart for sort of climate change and reducing carbon emissions, etc, etc, etc. And she keeps coming up with it, 25% carbon reduction for 2030. Now, she's also pushing this alternative fertiliser to obviously achieve these goals. But every farmer that's used it says it's completely and utterly useless, apparently. I forget the name of it. I had it written down somewhere, but I don't think it's here. It must be on a different page, sorry, but yeah, it'd be easy enough to find. Now, this is all based under sustainable development, and I've recently seen it was just a short video on the UN General Assembly, Antonio Guterres, the UN Secretary General. And there's like 17 goals for sustainable development, and he said these words that, and I've written it down just so that I get it right, that there needs to be a great reset. Yet speakers at Agenda 2030 Summit claim we need a great reset to get back on track, and that was just in the 22nd of this month. So, like I said, they're pushing ahead very, very quickly with this stuff, and we need to start getting versed in it and understanding that not only have they been planning this for a very, very long time, that they're actually quite far along. And some people think that it's so far along there's nothing that can be done. They rely on us thinking like that. So, to get to the contents of the book, and I'm obviously not going to read all of it, I'll read quite a lot of it. We'll see how long it takes. I'll read the most important parts of it, because, like I say, it's very important. We need to know what's going on at local level, and if we don't, we're going to get caught with our pants down, as so many people have already, unfortunately. So the United Nations Agenda 21 Sustainable Development Programme, it describes itself as a comprehensive plan of action to be taken globally, nationally and locally by organisations of the United Nations system, governments and major groups in every area which humanity impacts on the environment. And that major groups is like your NGOs. See, non-governmental organisation, people think it sounds like, oh, it's non-government, that's good. Not for profit, oh, that's good. They think that because these organisations have got these labels on them that they're coming from a positive angle, and it's just not true. I mean, it's certainly not true when people like George Soros are at the forefront of them. Some of its key policies objectives are an end to national sovereignty. So they want a hive mind. You can't be a sovereign being anymore and sort of draw up your own way of thinking. It's all part of the one way of thinking, because they need that. Any dystopian society needs that to function. It can't have diversity. Despite some of these groups saying that they're all for diversity, all this transgender nonsense and non-binary nonsense is about no human. It's about no human, that humans that cannot procreate because they want to start putting it in bloody petri dishes, and the children that come from it being raised by the state. Very much in line with Brave New World. An end of the Western democratic process. Well, if there ever was one. The end of common law, that's obviously a big one for them. The abolition of private property, which you read the news, look at just recently they put the tax up for people that own a second home. So the alternative is, for the vast majority of people, because of the rising cost of living, they are going to sell that home. And then the government more than likely will purchase it and give it to an immigrant. I'll say it again, I have no problem with that, but these immigrants coming in from all these other countries being not forced but nudged to come down over to this country to sort of get themselves a little working holiday, if you like, and claim some benefits. They think it's, oh, this is great, it's nice and we can travel here and we're getting paid for it, and they'll put a roof over and they'll pay for your kids, etc, etc, etc. And it's all part of a systematic plan to get them here into these human settlement zones. The abolition of private transport, we're already well on the way with that, because electric cars, they're actually designed, there's going to be places where they cannot go. And then if you add the sort of the rewilding aspect to things, we're not going to have a lot of places that we can sort of stretch our legs, are we? I mean, let's be honest here. The destruction of Western industrialisation, for anyone that's seen my last video, you'll see that was the agenda behind closing the pits and the steelworks. It was all done under the fact that we were harming the planet too much, but it wasn't. It was all done under the umbrella of Agenda 21, despite the first assembly not being until 1992, or whenever it was. I think there might have been one in 1990. Well, I'll come to that in this, it's in here. The ending of free enterprise, well, the harmonisation of incomes and redistribution of wealth across the globe, that's communism they're talking about there. So that everyone would have that sort of that universal basic income, which, if you watch my DWP videos and listen to the time my days in universal credit, you'll see that it is indeed communism. So, because people are skint, there's no doubt about that, and they're stealing it from the limitation of resource use. And this is in brackets, energy, water and minerals. So they're wanting to limit the limitation of resource use. So that's like, and if you look at the plans for Agenda 21, it's got how much clothes you can buy, how much meat you can eat per week. And I said this to someone, and I showed them the sort of the table on what they were trying to outline, and they had said to me, "Oh, no one will buy that. That'll never happen." It's like, but in 2019, if I'd brought the COVID restrictions to you, you would have said exactly the same about that, and they didn't say anything because it's true. So the population's to be concentrated in cities close to their place of employment. That's just a ghetto. I mean, that might, so that is nice and handy. I can commute to work, it's nice and easy, but it's just a ghetto really, and there won't be much more. It'll be houses and a factory. I mean, it really is. I'm feeling a little bit sick at the moment just actually thinking about that, because I mean, if you look, look at even Northern Ireland during the Troubles in the 70s and 80s. Was it Rathcoole or something it's called? Look at that place. That's basically a ghetto, or it was, not now, but it was at the time. I seen this documentary once, and it was just absolutely unbelievable that was in Britain even in the 70s. The restructuring of the family unit and increasing limitations on mobility and individual opportunity. Increasing limitations on mobility and individual opportunity. And the restructuring of the family unit, well, some would say that the destruction of the family unit, that began during COVID, because I know there's a lot of families out there that have got members in it that don't speak anymore because they had such opposing ideas with regards to COVID. So that was just another tick of the box for them with that. Continuous surveillance and monitoring of the population. We're already the most watched country in the world, Britain. Glasgow's a smart city. I think it was one of the UK's first. And London, the amount of cameras in London is just unbelievable. So they're already well underway for that. And the end of freedom of choice, and you could actually say they're quite far down the line with that as well, because people's freedom of choice has definitely been limited, certainly over the last 3 or 4 years. And anyone that does want to make any freedom, any choice by freedom, they sometimes, they just get, well, they're afraid sometimes because of the woke brigade. So this is why we need to stop worrying what other people think, and at the same time respecting the fact that people have got their own way of thinking and doing things. I see why that has to be a problem. Now, consider just a few of the policies coming out of our own British government. An end to national sovereignty. UN laws applied at the local level. I remember I heard Henry Kissinger, I can't remember who it was that said it, but they said someone had an interaction with him and they'd asked him why are we using UN troops for such things, or for any takeovers, why would we do that? And apparently he'd said because there's more chance that they'll go in and be a domestic terrorist, basically, because especially in America, people in any country wouldn't want to do that to their own. UN troops in a different country, it's a different matter. Private property and assets stripped away through economic hardship and crippling taxes. Like I just said there, they're putting more taxes up for people in second homes. Also seen recently they want to start taxing the inheritance tax. So inheritance a lot of the time comes from families that have worked really hard and done really well. The money's already been taxed, it's been kept in the bank, whatever. They then pass on, and they pass it on to their family members, and then the government wants to tax it again. It is absolutely despicable. It really is, and it's, I keep saying it, but when we walk around and don't want to hear these things, that's why we're here. That is why we're here. And we need to start facing it. The systematic destruction of productive industry, the spiralling burden of ever-increasing overseas aid programmes, we're sending aid overseas all the time, children stolen by the state and pushed into a privatised multi-billion-pound care system, some of the bloody cases that you've heard with social services and the police working together to steal kids from loving families for next to nothing. And I've had personal experience with this, and I've seen how they operate, and I've briefly mentioned it, that I was at a conference meeting with social services, etc. And I remember when I came out, I said to my brother, I said, I would hate to be a young single mum in there having to deal with that. It's ganging up, and they claim they're doing it for the benefit of the child, and maybe they think they are. But when you consider Agenda21, there's definitely a lot more to it. Now, there is children out there that do need to be rescued, and that's the problem. This is what they do though. They use that to their advantage. It's ripe for manipulation. Now, I've even heard that some kids, that if they want to identify as a bloody broomstick, and if you were saying, no, you can't do that, they get social services involved now. They go, oh, you should be like, it's ridiculous. It is absolutely ridiculous, and it's hardly surprising that it's happening when you think that drag queens are going in to schools and confusing kids about reality. Because if you're confused about reality, you know, you think of a shattered window. The place where it shatters is just one spot, but it permeates through the whole pane. It's the same with this. That's fundamentally why they're trying to undermine the truth with gender. 0 to 19 education programmes. Unreal. Crippling public transport costs, already getting there, or already there in some places. Ultra low emission zones and soon to be imposed road charging, already there. Told the story about that girl, I think it was in Leicester, who had been in one of these 15-minute zones, and she'd racked up a bill, and they rode off into the sunset with her money, kids or no. Massive surveillance, biosurveillance, digital ID, CBD. They've already tried that, but they will try it again, there's no doubt about it. But hopefully enough people is awake now to see that that was just complete and utter nonsense, and that some of the, even again at local level, at community level, who were lying to people, saying that you need to do this or you'll lose your job. Or I was into shops many times and, oh, you need to wear this mask. Well, I've got a card, oh, but they're handing out fines of £10,000. I don't care, mate. I've got a card here. They're just projecting their own fears on it. Oh, please wear that mask. And that's something we need to stop. We need to stop thinking that these things are for our benefit. These things are for a tyrant's benefit and only a tyrant's benefit. This report was originally written in 2013 and was made available in a digital format only. We are publishing it now in the physical format with some minor updates because, as you will see, it is still highly relevant today. Absolutely. They failed to meet their deadlines. Agenda 21 has not gone away. It has largely been rebranded Agenda 2030, but you will see hints of other policy areas that you may recognise as coming from the World Economic Forum as just one example. If after reading this report you take no action, your silence will signify your consent to place your life in their hands. And that's again, you see from COVID, my own father was one, he didn't need to look at any other information because a family member who's regarded as very, very intelligent, she's a cancer doctor or something like that, had told him that they're completely safe. And that was it. Okay, thanks for doing that thinking for me. I can get on with my life. Although some people haven't, have they? Now, this is the historical background. Again, I'm not going to go through all of this. I'll point out the basis of it and the bits that are important. So this is talking about the Treaty of Westphalia and the concept of sovereign nation states. And the concept of nation states is known to both legal and political scholars as the Westphalian Order, or Westphalian Order. Its origins can be traced to a series of treaties known as collectively the Treaty of Westphalia, 1648. Historically, this treaty ended the 30 Years' War. Key principles which impacted on the old world order were the principle of the sovereignty of the states and the fundamental right of political self-determination. So in other words, like back, they would have to get, if you went and took over a land, you would need to convert to their religion, or if you didn't, you got what for it. That sort of taking all that kind of thing away, as I understand it. The principle of legal equality between states and the principle of non-intervention of one state in the internal affairs of another state. Well, they're obviously breaking. Keir Starmer's just broke that. He just sent a load of bloody people to the rallies of the Trump. I don't know if it was Trump's rally or Kamala Harris's rally, but he shouldn't be allowed to do that because he's interfering in a foreign election. So that kind of goes against that because, well, they're going to push propaganda, aren't they? They're going to push wokeism. I mean, what a choice. Wokeism or Donald Trump's republicanism. I mean, I know Donald Trump, if you were to pick, that's who you're picking, but he's a Zionist, he's a made man in the Zionist outfit, ladies and gentlemen, and I know people think that he's the saviour in a suit, but he's not. The key pillar of the treaty was that it established the principle that a nation-state's sovereignty was the highest legal power against which there was no appeal. This concept of sovereignty has served as the organising principle of the world order for over 300 years. Within the United Kingdom, the structural integrity of the nation-state was buttressed by a number of key components. Following the Glorious Revolution and the Bill of Rights 1689, a new model of constitutional monarchy was established. A constitutional monarchy is one in which the powers of the ruler are restricted to those granted under the constitution of laws of the nation. In this system, the democratically elected parliament and its leader, the Prime Minister, exercise power with the monarch holding residual powers whilst holding a titular position as head of state. And that's another thing as well. That's been kind of done away with, like the thought that the Queen and the royal family don't have anything to do with government. Nonsense. She had to interfere in Parliament just not that long ago, and the idea that she's not got any power as head of state is just complete and utter nonsense. But this is what the Magna Carta was supposed to be about. It was supposed to be that the monarch was not above the law. The divine right of kings was supposed to be discarded because everyone was supposed to be equal. Now, I've even heard recently, Mum was telling me that she'd heard that Prince Charles is they're talking about trying to redraw that so that it takes away sovereignty. But, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me. The duties to preserve the structural integrity of the nation state are contained within the covenants expressed by the monarch during the coronation oath, ministerial and parliamentary oath sworn by elected representatives upon taking office, and the judicial oath sworn by those administering the British common law system of justice. In addition, the reciprocal allegiance, duties and obligations owned by the state to the individual and the individual to the state are expressed in various treaties and statutes and also within common law itself. But as you can see from Agenda 21, they want common law done away with, and that's why. This is why, because it's really getting in the way of them. Well, it's getting in the way of their agenda. Now, this next part, globalisation and governance challenge. Particularly in the last half century, we have seen the rise of multinational corporations which rival many governments in economic power. That's because they want a technocracy. A technocratic society means that transnational corporations and their leaders dictate to governments. They've already had a trial run with it again with COVID. So it depends what way you look at things, yes. But the vast majority of people that I've known at the time looked at COVID as something that was really happening, and they were actually scared of it. And it was like, look, that's fine, but if someone says, well, there's other information here, you need to at least check it. You have to check it. The same for international civil society organisations such as the WWF and the Greenpeace, intergovernmental organisations such as the United Nations, World Health Organisation, World Bank and the World Trade Organisation, and an increasing number of non-government organisations, as I mentioned before, often collaboratively working in alliances and networks who now claim to better represent individuals, or as we are called, civil society. And then you think about some of these NGOs, like an example of one is George Soros's Open Society Foundation, as I mentioned before. It's an open society. They want society opened so they can move their chess pieces into position for their agenda later. Now, the monarch's oath to govern the peoples of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland according to their respective laws and customs should not permit diktats from the United Nations or any other body to interfere in our everyday lives, yet they continue to do so and have for a very long time. Each party shall endeavour to procure the benefit, honour and advantage of the other, that thus on all sides they may see this peace and friendship flourish by entertaining a good and faithful neighbourhood. The Peace of Westphalia, Article 1. And it's got they've got a picture of Tony Blair here at a World Economic Forum podium. So for me, before September 11th, I was already reaching for a different philosophy in international relations from a traditional one that has held sway since the Treaty of Westphalia in 1648. Now, the next chapter becomes dark actors. Now, you've got your Bill Gates, Henry Kissinger's, there's a picture of Ted Turner and Bill Clinton here as well, a couple of others. These guys are they're just actors, they're just sellouts basically. Some of them are knowingly pushing the agenda and some aren't. But they are all on the same page, of that we can be sure. So in addition to the groups described above, there are also a range of other largely known groups seeking to exert influence on the world stage. These include groups such as the G20, G7, the Bilderberg Group, the Council on Foreign Relations, Trilateral Commission, who Keir Starmer's actually he's a member of the Trilateral Commission, the Ditchley Foundation and the Royal Institute of International Affairs, Chatham House, and the Club of Madrid. So the Club of Rome, as I've mentioned it in the last video, it's a secret society of a round table of secret societies. And it describes itself as a platform of diverse thought leaders who identify holistic solutions to complex global issues, the vast of which they create, and promote policy initiatives and action to enable humanity to emerge from multiple planetary emergencies. It includes within its membership familiar names such as Bill Clinton, he's a former president obviously, Jimmy Carter, another former president, Al Gore, his climate change bullshit that I've spoken about before as well. You've got Maurice Strong, he was the guy that held the first assembly, I've mentioned him before as well. Former head of the UN Environment Programme, Secretary General of the Rio Earth Summit, co-author with Gorbachev of the Earth Charter, and then there's Kofi Annan as well. He's recently former Secretary General, there's new ones I've mentioned before. Gro Harlem Brundtland, haven't heard of him before. United Nations Special Envoy for Climate Change, Robert Mueller, former Assistant Secretary General of the United Nations and creator of the World Core Curriculum. And then there's David Rockefeller, Bill Gates. I mean, Ted Turner's another one. I mean, Ted Turner, he started CNN and he used to have the wrestling promotion WCW, and I'm not joking you. I didn't watch that, but that particular promotion. But when you go back and see some of the storylines on that wrestling promotion with regards to satanic imagery, and it is absolutely mind-blowing. It really is. And that's going to the subconscious of everybody that's watching it, mainly children or young people. And it really is. It's having an effect on people that they don't know it. And Bill Gates, obviously the founder of Microsoft, George Soros I've mentioned, Tony Blair, former Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, I'll come to him later. And then there's Juan Carlos I of Spain, Prince Philip of Belgium, Queen Beatrice of the Netherlands, Donna Sofia, Queen of Spain, and Romani Prodi, former Prime Minister. So they're all in it together. And again, they've sold us out. A flavour of the intentions of this Marxist-dominated globalist cabal emerged in the 1970s. Now is the time to draw up a master plan for sustainable growth and world development based on global allocation of all resources and a new global economic system. 10 or 20 years from today it will probably be too late. Key tools being used to actively threaten the authority of national governments and nation states summit our global crisis such as biosecurity, the international financial crisis which they can create whenever they want, through the boom and bust system they've got set up. International crime, terrorism and people trafficking, and the threat posed by global warming, climate change, none of which apparently can be addressed by purely national legislation. In searching for the new enemy to unite us, we came up with the idea that pollution, was the threat of global warming. I mean, at this point, is anyone actually buying this nonsense? I mean, the water shortage, famine, and it would fit the bill. But they create these things. There's absolutely, I've said it before as well, it doesn't matter how much aid these countries seem to get, it never seems to solve their problem. So this sort of brings us to sustainable development. The most common quoted definition of sustainable development can be found in the Brundtland report, released during the 1987 United Nations World Commission on Environment and Development, and it says, development meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. See, this is why they put it into this jargon word salad format. It's to get people, it confuses people. According to the United Nations, the following are not suitable: ski runs, grazing of livestock, ploughing of soil, building fences, industry, single-family homes, paved and tarred roads, logging activities, dams and reservoirs, power line construction, and economic systems that fail to set proper value on the environment. Historical development and origins of this. The term sustainable development is another one of those phrases that seems to have sprung from nowhere and yet has so easily become embedded into modern language. Much like other examples such as transparency, moving forward our big society, sustainability, or sustainable development, look out for common and community words too. See, this is the thing, they use these words, as I'd said before, like with non-profit and non-government, to make people think it's a positive endeavour, and it's just not. This is another thing. Look, in 1989, the Brundtland Report was debated in the UN General Assembly, which decided to organise a UN conference on environment and development. This in turn laid much of the foundation for the Rio Earth Summit in 1992 and then an introduction of UN's Agenda21 Sustainable Development Programme. More than 178 nations adopted Agenda 21 at the Rio Earth Summit and also pledged to provide the progress reports on their implementation of the plan at 5-year intervals. And that's why it just keeps getting upgraded. Apparently they've seen this earlier on as well. In fact, I'll come to that. Although we have found no evidence that sustainable development is being implemented by the UK government, the Scottish Parliament, the Northern Ireland and Welsh Assemblies, together with regional, county and city councils right across the nation, in many instances, this political agenda is largely a complete mystery to the general public. And I don't know how many people have asked, what Agenda 21 is? No. And this is obviously because it's been implemented under different names, so everyone thinks it's different. But it's all under the Agenda 21 umbrella. And then you've got, like, you'll hear the term sustainable transport, sustainable agriculture, sustainable fishing. It's like smart, anything that's got smart in front of it, stay away from it. It does, it does, you could be forgiven for thinking that all is lost, but I know it just seems like that way, but we will get there, ladies and gentlemen, I promise you. So, this is coming to sort of the conflict between the foundations of liberty and sustainable development. And this is obviously a big one for them because, even liberty, as I've explained before, is not freedom. Liberty's liberty. Liberty's something you're given. Freedom's something you take. The institution of private property has long formed the basis for liberty within the United Kingdom, and it's got in brackets, an Englishman's home is his castle. Its principles enshrined in a largely uncodified constitution which include the Magna Carta, the Act of Settlement and in our own common law. 3 examples follow, and this is the Magna Carta that says this. No free man shall be taken or imprisoned, or be deceased of his freehold or liberties or free customs, or be outlawed or exiled or any otherwise destroyed, nor will we not pass upon him, nor condemn him, but by lawful judgment of his peers, or by the law of the land. The law of the land, that's quite important because they use the law of the sea, which is British maritime law. There's a difference. We will sell to no man, we will not deny or defer to any man, either justice or right, Magna Carta. Not only did the above clause of the Magna Carta introduce the concept of due process into English law, it also provided the foundation for trial by jury and paved the way for legal cases to be tried by lay magistrates, justice of the peace in brackets. In the latter case, this became crystallised in the Justice of the Peace Act 1361, from which the present day powers of JP can be traced. The constitutional significance of the Magna Carta, Bill of Rights and our system of common law was restated in the early 18th century, whereas the laws of England are the birthright of the people thereof, and all the kings and queens who shall ascend the throne of this realm ought to administer the government of the same according to the said laws. Act of Settlement 1701. And these things were all created, as I said before, to do away with the idea that kings have the divine right to do whatever the hell they like because they know better than everyone, because that's basically what it means. Now this brings us to COVID-19, the Great Reset, Klaus Schwab. And I've not actually read the Great Reset. I've read bits from it, but I've not read the whole thing. But this page is entitled Own Nothing, Be Happy, which people are starting to see that this is not just a wild conspiracy theory thought up by guys that are havering in their bedroom. We're not channeling this information in a darkened room through a bloody light bulb, are we? This stuff's in their own documents. The protection of private property rights afforded by the British Constitution is in direct conflict with the philosophy of the United Nations. For example, in 1976, a United Nations conference convened in Canada generated the Vancouver Declaration on Human Settlements and the Vancouver Plan of Action. The preamble to Agenda Item 10D, Vancouver Plan of Action, states the following. Land, because of its unique nature and the crucial role it plays in human settlements, cannot be treated as an ordinary asset. Controlled by individuals, private land ownership is also a principal instrument of accumulation, of concentration of wealth, and therefore contributes to social injustice. If unchecked, it may become a major obstacle in the planning and implementation of development schemes. Social justice, urban renewal and development, the provision of decent dwellings and healthy conditions for the people can only be achieved if land is used in the interests of society as a whole. In other words, if they've got a one world government where we are all under agreement, then, and things like the Magna Carta are the reason they need to manufacture your consent under that one umbrella. they can then dictate what's right for everyone. Public ownership or effective control of land in the public interest is the single most important means of achieving a more equitable distribution of the benefits of development, whilst assuring that environmental impacts are considered. Lands are a scarce resource whose management should be subject to public surveillance or control in the interest of the nation. B. Governments must maintain full jurisdiction and exercise complete sovereignty over such land with a view to freely planning development of human settlements. Another frightful creature to emerge from the Rio Earth Summit, the UNCED, was the Global Biodiversity Assessment, GBA. The GBA is a huge 1,140-page instrument that claims to provide a scientific basis for implementing the Convention on Biological Diversity. So they've got letters after their name, the people that drew this up, or maybe they haven't, but they know better, so we should just follow it. Property rights are not absolute and unchanging, it informs us, but rather a complex, dynamic and shifting relationship between two or more parties over space and time. And then a reasonable estimate for industrialised world society at the present North American material standard of living would be 1 billion. At the more frugal European standard of living, to 2 to 3 billion would be impossible. United Nations Global Biodiversity Assessment. And then they say a total population of 250 to 300 million people, a 95% decline from present levels would be ideal. Ted Turner, founder of CNN and major UN donor. And that's the guy I mentioned that's put all that satanic imagery through his wrestling promotion. I'm sure just because it looks good. Unbelievable. My 3 main goals would be to reduce human population to about 100 million worldwide, destroy the industrial infrastructure and sea wilderness with its full complement of species returning throughout the world. That's Dave Foreman, co-founder of Earth First. And then this is, he said this as well, we must make this as an insecure and inhospitable place for capitalists and their projects. We must reclaim the roads and ploughed land, halt dam construction, tear down existing dams, free shackled rivers and return to wilderness millions of acres of presently settled land. I mean, that's the Rewilding programme that I mentioned before. This is Maurice Strong, the founder of the UN Environment Programme and the guy that was at the Earth Rio Summit. Isn't the only hope for the planet that the industrialised civilizations collapse? Isn't it our responsibility to bring that about? Well, Dave Foreman, what he mentioned before, Maurice Strong was an oil tycoon, so it just doesn't make any sense that these guys would want to, or they're feeling guilty about their carbon footprint now after all these years. Nonsense. So the 126th Assembly, April 2012 of the Interparliamentary Union, the International Organisation of Parliaments, believes that, notwithstanding the current financial and economic concerns, climate change, by far the greatest challenge facing humanity, should be consistently and effectively addressed through a fair, transparent and equitable process, fully engaging all sections of civil society and respecting the principles of the Framework Convention on Climate Change. In particular, equity and common but differentiated responsibilities, calls for sustainable development to be given the highest political priority, and welcomes the proposal of the Global Sustainability Panel in the context of Rio Plus 20 to create a Global Sustainable Development Council. And then just some of the members of the delegation. The House of Lords included Lord Popat, Conservative Party, member of the Governing Council, Lord Reynard, MBE, Liberal Democrat, and Lord Jude, member of the House of Lords and Labour Party. Jude was also a member of the International Commission on Global Governance, 1992 to 2001, where he sat alongside Maurice Strong. So again, it's just all the same connections, all people pulling in the same sort of direction for a sort of great reset, new world order, whatever you want to call it. And then this brings to something they call the 3 E's, which is equity, economic prosperity and ecological integrity. How can they say... See, this is the thing, this is why you've got to say everything's got to be done, you've got to look at it, it's always the opposite to what they're saying is what they actually mean. The 3 E's of sustainability, which make up the Sustainable Development logo, consists of 3 connecting circles labelled as equity, economic prosperity and ecological integrity. The first E is social equity, using the law to restructure human nature. So they want to use the law against you to fundamentally construct this prison around you. It's based on demand for social justice. In non-news speak, this means the redistribution of wealth. Social justice is described as the right and opportunity of all people. But that's, just look at wokeism. How can you say that's what they're going for? It's just not. To benefit equally from the resources afforded us by society and the environment. Everything's the opposite to what they mean. The second, the economic prosperity, the redistribution of wealth and the creation of public-private partnerships. Readers should bear in mind the fact that almost every concept under Agenda 21 sustainable development is written in newspeak. It's to confuse you. As I mentioned, that's why they put in legalese jargon with sort of documents regarding the law. It's so people don't understand it. In order that the public might be deceived, words often have the opposite meanings of those described in your Oxford Dictionary. The term economic prosperity is no different. If you look around, you will see that there is austerity for the masses, whilst to globally enjoy economic prosperity as though they were isolated from world realities, which they are. They're living a completely different reality. Current lifestyles and consumption patterns of the affluent middle class involving high meat intake, use of fossil fuels, appliances, home and work care conditions, suburban housing are not sustainable. More is strong, although he's a hypocrite. And this is the thing, when you get to that level and into those sort of circles, it's all about the hedonistic way of living. They overindulge. It's to knock out the balance of nature. So don't believe that they're doing this stuff to rebalance things in the environment to make it better for everyone, because that's not how they look at it. In addition to its appeal for the international redistribution of wealth, is actually restructuring the British economy. Some say that's well underway. Well, it is well underway. It's almost achieved. Moulding it not on private enterprise, but on public-private partnerships. And a PPP is defined as an exclusive partnership between a public authority and a private entity that uses the financial resources of the private sector to carry out the legal activities or functions of the public sector. They want to use the law against you. So they can set up these non-government organisations and just and engage with public authorities using the law and public funds against you to build your own prison. That's the game here, people. PPPs do not work in a free market where honest competition decides who wins and who loses the business contract, due to the fact that the private company part of the PPP is granted special privileges by the government. This may include financial incentives, tax breaks, subsidies and insider privileges, such as arrangement forces non-PPP corporations to operate in a distorted marketplace, undermines the free market system and ultimately creates government-sanctioned monopolies in the economy. In essence, PPPs are legal vehicles being driven across many sectors to remodel both central and local government. PPPs can be found within the health and care sectors, energy, transport, waste management, housing and education. The motivational factor in the private arm of the PPP will always be bottom line profit. Always. And you can see obviously for the devolution of powers to Parliament. Because, I mean, I've seen some of the councillors just in this area, and honest to God, like, I wouldn't trust them to make me a cup of tea. Because I wouldn't, not because they've not got any integrity, because I wouldn't trust them to get it right. I've heard the way that some of them speak it, even just local things for planning permission with things, and no balls, no heart. They just nice and easy. Don't want to upset anything. All right, okay, that's fine. Yeah, we'll do that. Yes men, that's it. That's what they need. And yes men are people who are normally either self-centred and they just want to get on, or they're scared and they're cowardly. And that needs to go. All that thinking needs to go. Or this is the life we're going to be living, ladies and gentlemen. There's no point in saying that I'm havering here. It's look outside. Historically, local authority political representatives could be placed by local electors if local services fell below an unacceptable standard. When such services are provided by the private arm of a PPP, there is no such accountability. Local democracy is being undermined. The Sustainable Development Partnerships involve some domestic corporations, most multinational, many tax-exempt foundations, select individuals and collectivist politicians and their administrations. Their potential for fraud against the British taxpayer is enormous. As with everything else, it is ripe for manipulation. Ecological integrity. Environment, nature elevated above man. The British naturally support laws and regulations that are designed to effectively prevent pollution of the air, water or the property of another. But while sustainable development is prima facie concerned with the environment, it is really far more concerned with restructuring the government system of the world's nations so that all the people of the world will be the subjects of a global collective. That sounds wonderful, doesn't it? It works towards this end by continuously altering the relationship between the individual and the state. To better understand the scale of the transformation of society under sustainable development, consider this quote from the UN's Biodiversity Treaty. Nature has an integral set of different values, in brackets cultural, spiritual and material, where humans are one strand in nature's web and all living creatures are considered equal. Therefore, the natural way is the right way and human activities should be moulded along nature's rhythms. Again, anyone taking a first look at that sounds like a good idea. In the minds of the globalists and Agenda21, proponents humans are just one strand in the nature of things and are biological resources to be exploited by them. Just pieces on a chessboard, ladies and gentlemen. And then it's got, like, at the bottom here, it's got like a sort of a kind of chart thing that the global public-private partnership, and it's obviously got its levels, and you've got the Bank of International Settlements, and then you've got central banks below that, and then below them you've got things like the Council on Foreign Relations, World Economic Forum, Club of Rome, Chatham House, etc., etc. And then below that, they're the policy makers. Below that, you've got the policy distributors, which are the United Nations, the IMF, the IPCC, World Bank, WHO, global corporations, NGOs, etc., etc. And then you've got the policy enforcers in it all, which are national government, civil service, NHS. The NHS, as I've said, is just a cult. Honestly, the way they go on, even just in the local hospital, they're still, it's like some of them still wish COVID was, or the idea that COVID was still here is, I mean, it's ridiculous the way they go on. The courts, local governments, and then you've got selected scientific authorities like SAGE, these nudge bloody programmes, the FDA, MHRA, things like that. And then you've got the policy propagandists, that's the hybrid warfare specialists, you've got like mainstream media fact checkers, the 77th Brigade, things like that. And then right at the bottom of that, you've got policy subjects. And that's us, ladies and gentlemen, the public. And that's the structure. And then this is like the regionalisation. Regionalisation is an interim step along the road to globalisation. I was once told as well that when you go into certain places, you'll see it's twinned with somewhere in Germany or France. Apparently that's all to do with Agenda21, that when they do get it established, that it's something to do with the way they're going to structure the borders with regards to the human settlement zones, apparently. It can be described as the creation of another layer of government administration. Regionalisation with the United Kingdom began following the ratification of the Maastricht Treaty, Article 198 of the European Union, 1992 by John Major's Conservative government. So, I mean, this who even knew back in 1992 that this, when he's standing up there in bloody Parliament, and you think that they had a mind or an eye on 20 and 30 years later. It's really quite disturbing, and it really is, there's no doubt about it. The regionalisation process is also the worldwide goal of the United Nations following the Earth Charter, Agenda 21 Blueprint for Sustainable Development, which was ratified in 1992, as I've mentioned. And then you've got like, some of their goals are, we've been able to identify a series of steps taken by successive governments which have prevented the blocking of the regionalisation process by a hostile public. These steps have included ignoring a referendum vote which rejected the concept of elected regional assemblies, covertly establishing, funding and promoting an organisation designed to train future leaders in the new United Nations governance system, and the remodelling of the architecture of British system of government, marginalising the views of individual electors by introducing a new system of participatory democracy by stealth. And those promoting the new model of global governance hold the following view of representative democracy, and they say that democracy is not a panacea, it cannot organise everything, and it is unaware of its own limits. These facts must be faced squarely. Sacrilegious though this may sound, democracy is no longer well suited for the tasks ahead. The complexity and the technical nature of many of today's problems do not always allow elected representatives to make competent decisions at the right time. In other words, you're an idiot and you need us to hold your hand. So take my hand. Initially, the assemblies were created for Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland. The Welsh Assembly was in for the referendum in '97. This was the devolution of the powers, all done in the name of humanity. And this is just going into a little bit more about the unelected regional assemblies that they have, etc., etc. A lot of it is sort of some of the jargon that I've already read out. Because it is, I mean, it can be quite boring reading some of this stuff, and you might have to Google a couple of words to give it context, but if that's what you need to do, that's what you need to do. So this brings us to a common purpose. Now this is the organisation that I couldn't remember the name of in a video a few months back. And they're quite a disturbing charity, because it's almost like a mind control operation. It's like something that they got some funding to train, I think it was a couple of hundred civil servants. I can't remember when it was. But some of the things that they're told, you're above the people that's below you, you're better than them, and it's just very, very nasty. And I just wonder that some of these call centres that I've worked at, I wonder if they get some of their rhetoric from things like common purpose. Because, I mean, the way some managers treat you in a call centre is just absolutely despicable. Absolutely despicable, and they get away with it, and I think this is why. Central to all this is a charity established with the sole purpose of training future leaders who could be parachuted in to control the levers of power in the new governance system. The common purpose conveyor belt system for producing useful idiots was initially funded by Deutsche Bank. Yeah, Deutsche Bank, the banks are very benevolent, aren't they? And was associated with a shadowy organisation such as the Ditchley Foundation and the Royal Institution for International Affairs. It was founded in 1988 by Julia Middleton, and she founded Media Standards, formerly the Marxist think tank Demos, the industrial site now known as the Work Foundation, operating from Westminster, is more recently founder of Women Emerging, a new leadership organisation for women. She acted as a common purpose CEO until 2000, still involved with the organisation. It's like I say, it's a leadership training organisation, and since 1988 has worked hard to assist its graduates into government and corporate positions where they have influence over new hires. So these sort of people, they're only going to hire a certain type of person that they know will carry the agenda forth and follow the rhetoric and the training of common purpose. Because a decent person, they wouldn't be able to. And like I say, the way I've been spoken to by people in call centres is despicable. You'd like to think you'd lose your job in other industries for doing that. In 2010, Common Purpose was given a contract to train the top 200 UK civil servants. As a result, it is now difficult to find an organisation in any walk of life which is not, to some extent, completely infused with common purpose ideology. Sustainability is at the heart of that ideology. And like my manager at Universal Credit, when I was there, he came from, is it CERC or something you call it? It's like that government, a circle. Is it Circle? I can't remember exactly what it's called, but he came from there, and I would imagine that they'll definitely have had their rhetoric from it. And you could see by the way that he used to interact with me that he's definitely, I'd like to think he wasn't like that and he's at home like, but yeah, there was times where I felt spat on really, the way that he'd spoken to me, and previous managers to him as well, and the higher you go up, the worse it gets. So the UN had this to say about remodelling of our system of government. With a view to strengthening the role of non-governmental organisations as social partners, the United Nations system and government should initiate a process in consultation with non-governmental organisations to review formal procedures and mechanisms for the involvement of these organisations at all levels, from policy making and decision making to implementation. Note that in this post-democratic era, there will be consultation with NGOs but not with electorate. So in other words, no one will be elected, they'll be placed. I mean, no one's elected anyway, or very few are. But we'd still debate that. It won't be up for debate. Beyond Boundaries, Citizen Centre Local Service for Wales published 2006 Review of Local Service Delivery in Wales. The review team was chaired by Sir Jeremy Beecham. The following statements are extracted from that report. And paragraph 630, leaders need to create a culture which emphasises achieving results across organisational boundaries. The search for citizen-centred solutions must include genuine and open partnership with the private and third sectors. And the third critical success factor in partnership. Partnership is difficult and needs the investment of time, resources and leadership, but has a key role to play in delivering significant improvement in services. And then we've got a quote here from Julia Middleton. Many leaders have established a reputation in the internal silo environment of their organisation. When they extend their leadership role beyond the organisation, authority and legitimacy are constantly in question. It's no coincidence that Sir Jeremy Beecham, author of the Beyond Boundaries report, has been a council member at Common Purpose since 1989. And again, that just outlines that they keep moving people. Like, I mean, you'll get someone that used to work for Google that would then go and work for DARPA. It just doesn't seem to translate, and that happens all the time, and it's happening here. And there's a reason for that. It's not because of their expertise, it's because they know they're a yes man or woman. And then Mutual Action, Common Purpose, Empowering the Third Sector, published by the Fabian Society in 2008. Now, the Fabian Society is a secret society that they say that you cannot become a Labour Prime Minister unless you've been part of it. And their logo is a wolf in sheep's clothing. And they get their name from a Roman emperor. I can't remember, it's not Fabian, I can't remember his exact name, but it's Fabian's taken from his name. And his claim to fame, well, not claim to fame, but his modus operandi was that when he was going to take over a land, he would cut off the water supply, poison the water supply, cut off resources, just lots of different things to undermine society, so that when he went in, he could just steamroll over everyone because they were drained their resources and energy and pretty much everything else. And then when you consider their logo, the Fabian Society, as a wolf in sheep's clothing, then that explains it. They are wolves in sheep's clothing. There's no doubt about it. And it just so happens, I mean, Starmer will be here, been part of the Fabian Society. I don't even need to check it to know how well I've been. Also describes many of the structural changes to the British system and government outlined in the Beecham report. It is the English counterpart to the Sir Jeremy Beecham report. Many of the individuals named in the acknowledgement section of this report also have connections with the organisation Common Purpose. And then the next page is just, it's sort of like, it's talking about democracy replaced, participatory democracy in action. The most blatant example of how the voice of the British electorate has been silenced and replaced by the views of favoured NGOs is best illustrated by reference to the following short extract from the Hansard report of the House of Commons debate concerning ratification of the Treaty of Lisbon. David Miliband, only in Britain do we have a major party opposed to the contents of the treaty. The National Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children has pledged its support for the provisions of the treaty. Interruptions, let me make the point. So, the Lisbon Treaty, I mean, when you look at that, that's a total scam as well, because there was a document that came before it that was outlining basically the goals of Agenda 21 in the Irish society, and the Irish clicked onto it and they said, no, we're not having it. I think that was the Lisbon Treaty, and then they changed it, wasn't it? They changed the document. It was 98% the same as the previous one, but because they reworded it differently, they went for it. I'm pretty sure it is the Lisbon Treaty that done that. I'm not sure, don't quote me actually, I should probably have checked that before. And then it says, David Millen, no, I'm going to make the point the NSPCC pledged its support as of One World Action and Oxfam interruption will give way in due course. Environmental organisations support the treaty provisions on sustainable development, and even the Commission of Bishops supports the treaty. So everyone's apparently supported it. They supported their enslavement apparently. No, you just reworded it, mate. And then it's just got a screenshot here. General elections are a travesty of democracy. Let's give the people a real voice. George Monbiot, or I like to say it correctly, George Moronbiot, an absolute clown of a man, who thinks, well, I don't know that much about him, but I know from what he says about climate change that he just looks to be another one of the gang. Like, either that or he's an imbecile, probably both. The concept of national sovereignty has been immutable, indeed a sacred principle of international relations. It is a principle which will yield only slowly and reluctantly to the new imperatives of global environment cooperation. What is needed is recognition of the reality that it is simply not feasible for sovereignty to be exercised unilaterally by individual nation states, however powerful. And that was Maurice Strong that said that. So again, these people have said these things. There's no point saying that it's not going to happen, it won't happen. It's happening. Regionalisation must precede globalism. We foresee a seamless system of governance from local communities, individual states, regional unions, and up through to the United Nations itself. And then that kind of brings us to sort of local enterprise partnerships. Yeah, I'll move on to the next part of this. Right, so this next part here is an organisation by the name of ICLEIE, and it's local governments for sustainability in the world's leading association of cities and local governments dedicated to the United Nations Programme of Sustainable Development. ICLEIE promotes local action for global sustainability and supports cities to become sustainable, resilient, resource efficient, biodiverse, low carbon, to build a smart infrastructure and to develop an inclusive green urban economy. And that was the organisation that's got like something like 1,760 counties and cities in 126 countries under its umbrella to follow this sustainable development programme. And it was launched in 1990 at the World Congress of Local Government Sustainable Future. It's headquartered in Bonn, Germany, and was instrumental in the development of Agenda 21, having drafted Chapter 28 in 1991 in preparation for the Earth Summit and reaffirming its dedication to the UN 2002 Earth Summit mandate. Local Action 21 strategies will ensure the unwavering systematic implementation of local action plans over the next decade. And then it says it works around the world with local special interests to translate international policy objectives into local and regional legislation. Every country has sustainable development strategies guided by government agencies, NGOs and or ICLEIE. ICLEI directs its policies that promote stack 'em and pack 'em surveilled housing. So, yeah, I mean, we're already seeing that's happening. Like, it's just as many people into a sort of crammed area with a factory stuck on the end of it, is really what they're after. Traffic congestion, inaccessible open space, managed control over our lives, mismanagement of water supplies, already doing it. The prohibition of natural resource management that leads to increased fire hazards and private property restrictions. Karl Marx wrote in the Manifesto of the Communist Party, Part 2, in this sense, the theory of the communists may be summed up in the single sentence, abolition of private property. So it's a communist agenda. There's no point thinking that it's all different, because all these communism, fascism, these different religions, they're set up by the same people. So that means they've got the same agenda. Of course they have. And then this next part, sort of like smart growth. The CPRA London report, Family Housing, the Power of Concentration, reveals that the following brownfield site is already receiving funding under smart growth in Carlisle Park, Rotherham, South Yorkshire, up to 400 new homes. So this is just all, see, this was all put in place in preparation because they knew that vast numbers of people would be getting moved from one part of the world to the other. And they've obviously dictated that. And this is something called the Delphi technique. At this local level, your own council will have prepared what is known as a local development plan. An LDP is the plan for the future development of the local area drawn up by the local planning authority in consultation with the community. The consultation with the community will be in the form of public-private meetings. These will take the place in the form of a Delphi meeting. A Delphi meeting is set up on the premise that the organiser is welcoming the public's input, but the truth is that the outcome of the meeting was predetermined in advance. These meetings are run by a trained facilitator. However, it is not the role of the facilitator to ensure that all views expressed at the meeting are entered into the public record. The facilitator's role is to guide the group into reaching a consensus on the project. Consensus is generally reached by using subtle tactics to marginalise opposition. One tactic might involve recording only good ideas whilst promoting criticism for bad ideas. The public is there for the sole purpose of providing a veneer of respectability that the outcome was arrived at by democratic means and that there is a majority view in support of the LDP. Sort of like in government. It's this government set up, Lib Dems, Conservative, Labour, and now Reform. Vote for whoever you want. Doesn't really matter who gets in. This product of the stakeholder council, typically approved by local governments without question, requires individuals to submit to predetermined conclusions of the non-elected regional authority that is no longer accountable to voters. So it's just to give, again, it's the illusion that this is a good idea, even if you individually reject it and so I'm not sure about that. If you're not versed and you're not awake, then you're going to think, well, I'm stupid me, so they must all be right. I used to think like that, and please don't think like that, because you're not stupid, I can promise you. You've just been manipulated your whole life to think that you are. And then the funding sources, this is interesting, for the climate partnerships. The list of money sources for the implementation of sustainable development is enormous. And this is the bit that sickens me, because we are in crisis. There's people in this country that are going without. There's people that are it used to be if you got a job that paid half decent, your problems were solved within a few months. That's gone. Well, they siphon this money from our system and send it overseas for nonsense like climate change. British taxpayer money is redistributed via UK governmental departments. Non-government organisations are essential players in the UN governance system, and these organisations, once it's obviously been redistributed to the government departments, I would imagine it's siphoned out by the NGOs, etc, etc. The taxpayer funds become channelled via government departments down to these NGOs who are given massive tax advantages. Obviously they are. Examples of these NGOs are Climate Partnership UK, the Energy Saving Trust, Change Agents UK, Common Purpose, Smart Growth UK, the National Trust. After government and the support of NGOs, the third leg of the Sustainable Development Financial Insiders is a group of tax-exempt foundations. Of course it is. Some examples are Joseph Rowntree Foundation, the Esme Fairburn Foundation, the Prince's Foundation, Carnegie UK Trust, the Sainsbury Family Charitable Trust, UK Community Foundations, the Big Lottery Fund, and many, many more. I mean, things like that, I even think I've seen something the other day there. I mean, they can fund all that nonsense, but then I'd seen a video the other day there, or news the other day there, that the Creative Scotland, like where they funding to make your own film and stuff like that, it's been, the funding in it's been decreased by 6.6 million, which is a lot of money. So we can't afford this, because that's happening. But we've got plenty of money to siphon out for sustainable development, to sustain our development of this control system. We need to sustain that. And sustain it we will, and we'll do it with your consent. We'll manufacture your consent. Because things like the Magna Carta get in our way. So that's why we need to lie to you. And then this here is I've read a bit of this political support. It was his name again, Peter Mandelson, when I done that last video. So I won't go into too much about this, but what I did see here was there was a screenshot that was taken, and it was taken on the 11th of November 2012, and is of the United Kingdom country page found on the website of the UN Department for Economic and Social Affairs, Division for Sustainable Development. And when I was looking at it, it had things on it: national information, national focal point, Mr. Jonathan Tilson, Department of Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, London. Click here for more information, and it had like the status reports, linked country to NSDC, DSEs and case studies, and I thought that looks quite interesting. That I thought I'll need to find the link for that and post it. And then I read this: neither page is available in 2024 except via the Wayback Machine. On page 10 of the UK document, 10-year framework of programme sustainable consumption and production partner, it states that sustainable consumption And production is a cross-government influencing programme led by the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs. It builds partnership with key stakeholders to influence and affect changes in the way business operates and how people live their everyday lives. And this is why they've got these think tanks and these nudge programmes and common purpose and all that. It's to sort of push everyday people like me and you down the path of their control system and to accept it. And thankfully a lot of people are waking up, they really are, but there's still too many people that are, it's almost like they're scared to face it, and there's nothing to fear, absolutely nothing to fear here. And as well as a range of UK government departments such as the Department for Business, Innovation and Skills and the Department for Transport, publicly funded bodies such as Sustainable Development Commission, the Office of Government Commerce and the Environment Agency are members of the Project Board. The Sustainable Development Commission is the government's independent advisory body in sustainable development. Their work is fourfold: advisory, capacity building, advocacy and watchdog. And then, according to the United Nations, effective execution of Agenda 21 will require a profound reorientation of all human society, unlike anything the world has ever experienced, a major shift in the priorities of both government and individuals, and an unprecedented redeployment of human and financial resources. Yeah. And then it's just got like, I mean, Tony Blair's still standing up talking about sustainable development. And he said this: the past 20 years have seen a growing realisation that there are models of development which are simply unsustainable. We live in a world coping with consequences of climate change and many resources strained by patterns of production and consumption. This joint framework represents a decisive move toward more sustainable development, a move we are making not merely because it is the right thing to do, but because it is in our long-term interests. Sustainable development across the UK is not an option, it is a necessity. So it's a necessity. And then it's just got like a sort of flow chart here. It's like living with environmental limits, respecting the limits of the planet's environment. See, this is what they're doing. They're manipulating people to think that if you don't do this, we're going to kill the planet. And things need to be balanced. I'm not saying that. Nature has to be balanced. Of course it does, but not in the way they want to balance it. And to improve our environment, ensure that the natural resources needed for life are unimpaired and remain so for future generations. And yet, some of the companies that are supporting this and some of the people that are involved with the companies that are supporting, they've done more to harm the environment in a couple of years or since smartphones have came out than we've ever done. So, and then it's got sustainable communism, we're all in this together. The New Politics Network was established in December 1999 following transformation of the democratic left. The democratic left was the legal successor organisation to the Communist Party of Great Britain. In 2004, Charter 88 and the New Politics Network set up a joint working relationship to make the most of their resources. This led to, among other things, the establishment of the elective Lord of Campaigns. The two organisations decided to formalise their working relationship in 2006. And following all-out member ballot of both organisations did emerge as the Unlocked Democracy in November 2007. I didn't know it was in June, but there you go. And it also incorporates two other organisations, Active Citizens Transform and Power 2010. All sounds very good, doesn't it? And then the next page says the moulding of young minds, and I don't think anyone can be under any doubt that children are being targeted at an alarming rate because they are the adults of tomorrow. And John F. Kennedy said this, quite a lot to say, he wasn't an angel but he had some good things to say. The goal of education is the advancement of knowledge and the dissemination of truth. And as mentioned before, like what schools are teaching their children is climate change. The local school here, there was one day the kids were out bloody protesting on the road, with their placards telling people to slow down and don't use their cars. And I'd actually sent them a report from the IPCC saying that what they were telling their children with regards to CO2 was actually incorrect. They never got back to me. They seen the message, but they never got back to me. I said, here, show them that instead of trying to tell them some truth. Instead of trying to scare them by manipulating them into a position of fear and moulding their young minds, as it says here. In the National Curriculum of 2000, the following values, aims and purposes were introduced. Pupils should develop awareness and understanding of and respect for the environments in which they live and secure the commitment to sustainable development at a personal, national and global level. And again, that all sounds very, 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 very good, but it's they want to dictate that. It's them that decide what that is, not us. And if you don't follow it, you're harming it. You're harming the planet. It's nonsense. And the NGO sector in the UK boasts a wide variety of ESD activities within the form and informal education at all levels. NGOs involved with the include WWF UK, Forum of the Future, Groundwork, Oxfam, the Royal Society for Protection of Birds, Campaign to Protect Rural England, Greenpeace, Friends of the Earth, Common Purpose and the Yorkshire Humber Global Schools Association. Yeah. And then it's just got, obviously, again, it's all this stuff with regards to it's all very Hitler Youth. It really is. It really is. There's nothing else for it. It is. It's like when you read some of it, and I heard people say that children have been told what happens in school stays in school. Well, so the age-old question that parents ask children when they come in, how was school today? You can't ask that now. It's a secret. What happens in school stays in school. And this is why they want the state to raise the children, because no decent parent would consent to having their 6-year-old taught about masturbation by a drag queen. And it's all been done systematically to try and trick people. And well, I don't even see how it can trick people in to thinking it's the right thing. Because if you've got just one brain cell in active duty, you're going to see that something's wrong here. And this brings us to the Localism Act. I won't go into too much about this. You can obviously the Localism Act 2011 if you want to look at it. It does bore me reading legalese jargon, I have to be honest, but that's why it's done like that. The Localism Act subverts the historical limitation of powers of local authorities and other public bodies. The default position at law has been long settled. The case of Entick v Carrot in 1765 established the civil liberties of individuals and limited the scope of executive power. The court declared that the state may do nothing but that which is expressly authorised by law, while the individual may do anything but that which is forbidden by law. And that seems fair enough. The case is famous for the dictum of Camden LJ. If it is law, it will be found in our books. If it is not to be found there, it is not law. Now, a natural consequence of the above case law has been the actions taken by local authorities and public bodies which are not authorised by law are ultra vires beyond the powers and have been struck down by the courts. The thing is, though, there's a lot of woke judges out there as well now, and they don't want to go against the grain. So, I mean, some of them do, but not all of them, not nearly enough of them. And then it says here, the Plain English Guide to the Localism Act, Department of Communities and Local Government, November 2011, expands a little by saying that local authorities' powers and responsibilities are defined by legislation. In simple terms, they can only do what the law says they can. The government has turned this assumption upside down. Instead of being able to act only where the law says they can, local authorities have been free to do anything, provided they do not break other laws. It gives local authorities the legal capacity to do anything that an individual can do that is not specifically prohibited. Yeah, it does make you wonder, like, how they've gotten as far with this, doesn't it? But they've done it, as I said before, covertly, stealth. Yep, stealth, that's how they've done it. And then this is it at the last debate. What's that, an hour and 23 minutes? That's been quite a long one. And this last page is Agenda 21 in my area. So here are some ways to recognise if Agenda 21 is being implemented in your area. Number one, your council is a member of organisations such as the ICLEIE, which promotes the creation of sustainable communities in line with United Nations Agenda 21. Your council is a sustainability director of Department of Sustainable Development in charge of coordinating the planning and implementation of sustainable development policies in your area. It has a vision, master of comprehensive plan, typically created within the past 5 to 10 years, that promotes the 3 E's of sustainable development that I mentioned earlier. This might be named a sustainable development strategy, and there may be a local development plan. Your council supports high density mixed use pedestrian and bicycle oriented development patterns constructed primarily along public transfer and rail corridors. This may be termed affordable housing, but is also known as smart growth. And your council, if it belongs to the Earth Charter, or your mayor has signed the Covenant of Mayors Agreement, voluntarily committing to increasing energy efficiency and use of renewable energy sources in their areas. Your local leaders accept man-made global warming as fact and begin to endorse policies to mitigate any actions or development that may promote global warming. Your local leaders begin to refer to your community as transition town and begin teaching through local government and institutions a community focus on interdependence with nature, interconnectedness and globalism. And your local government uses the language of social equity such as food justice, economic and environmental justice, fairness, direct democracy, diversity, food deserts and wealth redistribution. And if your local school is promoting environmental awareness and sustainable development with a focus on becoming environmentally literate global citizens, I would imagine if it's in the curriculum, that'll more than likely be added to the curriculum by now. And your local school may also be involved with UN-sponsored education agendas. It may also have fingerprint ID for school lunches. Jesus Christ. Your local government authorities begin exceeding their constitutionally granted powers to assist in the promotion of sustainable initiatives through public-private partnerships. And if they're using language that calls for redefining how we determine progress and prosperity away from traditional wealth, you'll know that they're trying to follow an agenda. Now, I know that some people might look back and say, well, yeah, they're maybe trying it, but I can't see them bringing it all to fruition. I would just say that these people are not, that they're evil, but they're not stupid. And the problem we've got is that they know our minds better than what we do. And because of that, they're easy, the way they've manipulated us has been very, very easy. But it can be a double-edged sword for them, because we can turn that around and we can take control in our minds again simply by saying, I don't need to listen, these idiots are not better than me just because they wear nice suits and they've got these fancy educations and private jets. They're not better than you. In fact, they're way beneath you, in fact, because I'd like to think that you, the person that's watching this, would never ever sell out humanity or even your local community the way that these people have. Now, I've had people tell me that they don't like, when I've spoke about these things and pointed out certain things, like for instance the implementation of 5G, when lockdown was the first 3 weeks of the first lockdown, I'd never seen so many BT buddy vans. And I've actually just had a freedom of information back from them. They sent me this document in regards to, for a local council, with regards to planning permission for such things, but I'm not sure why they've sent that. They've also sent another form. I'll maybe do a wee video on it so that to show people how to do a freedom of information. It's not hard, you just need to email your local authority. But that's an idea. And the vast majority of people that were driving BT vans and putting those towers up wouldn't even have known about Agenda 21. And it would seem that, like I say, all might be, it appears that all is lost. I've had people telling me to stop talking about this because they don't want to hear it anymore because they're so scared of it. But just remember, we are highly adaptable. We've got the spirit within us. It's amazing. I said this to a kid I worked with the other day there. Life's magic. The spirit within us is magic if people would only realise it. And I know it's, when you're sitting, I've kind of got back to work and I've got things moving again. It's maybe perceived for me to be easier to say these things as someone that's sitting, that can't barely put the lights on. And they're obviously in a lot of hardship. But I learned something years ago. I can't remember where I learned it, but I'd heard it, because I'm not really into winemaking, but I'd heard that the best wine, the best grapes that are growing, that produce the best wine, are growing on the roughest ground. So the grapes that have had to fight and struggle for every last drop of water and nutrient and sunlight, on the worst ground, the roughest ground, are actually the grapes that produce the best product. Now, I think that's got a profound meaning in it. That means that just because you're in the fire, and you need to go through the fire. I've said this to a few people. You put the steel into the fire and it looks like you could almost ping it, it would just disappear when it's bright red. But when that cools and it all cools down, it's all said and done, it re-emerges stronger. Because every part of evolution, it takes stress to evolve to the next level. And that's more than likely why grapes that are grown on the roughest ground, that are struggling, produce the best in the end. And that's why if you are in the fire at the moment and it is getting really, really hot and you're struggling to feed yourself, just know that you're only in the fire, and it's eventually you will re-emerge from it. And when you do, it builds those new parts through the challenges that I've mentioned in previous videos. Ups and downs, ups and downs. Ups and downs will get you quicker, get to your destination quicker than what a straightforward path will. So that's the way I look at it now when things get tough. I just think to myself, I'm just in the fire still. I'm still going through it. And you need to go through it, because there's no point in just having a nice comfortable life where you better not step out of line here, and I better watch what I'm saying here, and I'll not bother reading the room, I'll just not say anything. You're not going to get anywhere doing it like that. You're going to fail by default. So just know that the energy within each and every one of us is stardust. It literally is stardust. And you can use it you've got to make a start on something. Don't be scared of this, because once you connect to that spirit, you'll see that there's nothing to fear. Actually, once you do, and you look at the agenda, like things like Agenda21, 2030, and you look at some of the child abuse rings that they've got, and you start to look at it and say, well, and the propaganda they put out, you say, well, I can see why they do that now, because they're actually more scared of us. It's like the insects, people that are scared of spiders, it's like they're actually more scared of you. It's the same with these fucking idiots. And they do all this stuff because they're scared of you, and because they're scared of you bloody connecting to that energy. And as I said earlier, that's why they've got things like the Magna Carta, and why they need to bloody manufacture your consent, because things like that are in the way. So you need to know that unless you face it, running away does absolutely no good, because you're not going to get any growth out of that. So we need to face it and stop asking people to stop talking about it, because it makes us feel uncomfortable, and stop getting comfortable in the lie, because we've been there far too long now, and it's D-Day's coming. We're at a crossroads. No men in suits are coming to save you. Jesus isn't coming back for the second coming. You are the saviour. No extraterrestrials are coming down to land in the White House lawn to do it for us. You are the saviour that you've been waiting on, as was I. And there's no point sitting thinking, but you're different, because I'm not. We're unique in our own way, but we're part of the same one energy. And we get out of our problems in our own unique way. No one ever does it the same. I don't think they do anyway. Everybody's got their own unique way of doing things. And this is why. It's like a fingerprint. They're all more or less the same, but unique in and of themselves. It's the same with your energy. And once you realise that, and once you, it's not easy. It isn't, I'm not going to say it's easy to get into these routines, but you need to try and make a start and set the goals lower. And I would start by looking at your local authority and just try to verify some of this stuff. I'll get in touch with Claire to find out if this book can be purchased. I'd like to think it could, like. So, because I think every household should have a copy of it, just to sort of to at least look back with hindsight, and as we're moving forward, at least we've got the documentation there. And Mum said to me the other day, well, there's some legalese jargon in it that you might not be able to understand. Well, you just have to do what I done. When I first started reading, honestly, I was spending more time Googling words than I was actually reading. But eventually you get there. You eventually get there. And you start to build up a repertoire of words, and it gets to the stage where you read it and you know exactly what it means. So that's the end of today's video. I'd just like to thank everyone for watching, and it's obviously continued with me on this journey. I really do appreciate it, and I'll see you on the next one.